Good morning and welcome to this webinar brought to you by Construction Management and BIM Plus. This session is entitled Information Management's Role in Sustainability in association with Ideagen Mail Manager. Our programme today: we can't meet sustainability goals without information management. This webinar takes a deep dive into how Skanska's award-winning 5D Plus BIM tool will help the contractor to achieve its net zero carbon target for its projects and supply chain by 2045. In the second half, Ideagen Mail Manager will focus on an often neglected part of information management, email management. And at the end, there'll be the Q&A session. Let me introduce our speakers. First up, you're going to hear from Goulielmos Floros, 5D Plus Digital Solutions Manager at Skanska. And then we're going to hear from Liam Jones, Senior Client Manager at Ideagen Mail Manager. I'm Justin Stanton, Editor of BIM Plus. I'm your chair this morning. Some housekeeping, which if you've done many of our webinars, you'll be well versed in this. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions, not the chat function. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions. The panel will address those questions during the Q&A session after the presentations have concluded. This webinar will be available on demand via the available to watch on demand via the original registration link later today. There is 1 hour's CPD credit for those who complete this webinar live. CPD certificates will be issued a couple of hours after the webinar has finished. That's enough of the housekeeping. William, if you're ready, it's over to you. If you'd like to share your screen and open up your mic and camera.
Thank you, Justin. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Great.
Yep, perfect.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Goulielmos Floros, but you can also call me William, as it's easier to pronounce. I work for Skanska for the past 2 years, and my role focuses around 5D plus digital solutions, which also brings us to today's discussion topic, which is to communicate to you how Skanska building is leveraging 5D plus BIM to achieve net zero. So I'll try to share all the key information about this process, which, as shown in the agenda, are the following. We will start with giving an overview of the process and touch on how information management enables it. Then we will continue with the goals we aim to achieve through 5D plus BIM and the focus areas we have identified to help us achieve them. Following that, we will dive into the process diagram and lastly highlight the benefits and the expected outcomes of 5D plus. Of course, in the end, we will have some time for a Q&A. So what is a 5D plus BIM process? The way we speak of it in Skanska building is that in order to establish a proper 5D plus BIM process, you need to have a 3D model, and it needs to be modeled both graphically and non-graphically developed. Then we integrate the time and the program of the project, making the 4D model. And following that, we integrate the 3D model with cost information in order to be able to produce cost takeoffs from the modeled elements. And finally, we expand this dimension into the 5D plus dimension by also integrating some carbon rates and produce carbon takeoffs from the 3D model. So the key to this process is standardizing the steps of how we develop these dimensions across the project, because if we manage to do that, we will be able to start automating the data flow and information across the dimensions. So whenever something gets updated, it can be easily update the rest of the dimensions as well. So what's the role of information management into the 5D plus BIM process? So usually in every project we have different parties working together, and most commonly, let's say, a customer and the designer with a contractor. These two parties usually exchange information in different types of formats, PDF, Excels, some 3D models, etc. So in the start of the project, the customer, in the early stages of the project, the customer has some targets to achieve. And based on those targets to achieve and the collaboration they have with the designer, they usually provide some information to the contractor, and they're asking them to achieve these targets. However, in order for the contractor to be able to implement 4D, 5D, and 5D plus, in order to achieve those targets, sometimes they're missing information from what's provided by the customer and the designer. And this makes sense because the designer and the customer do not know from the earlier stages of the project all the time what supply chain is the contractor going to use. And they don't have the data that the main contractor has when working with different types of supply chain. So there is this need of collaboration between the two, and based on what is needed, we are providing some new information, and this flow of information and collaboration between the two goes on until all the requirements are fulfilled and the level of information needed to implement 5D plus BIM is achieved. So what are the goals and focus areas of our 5D plus BIM process? The goals is to start structuring our projects as a form of a database, which will also be funneling into one big database where it's going to contain structured, organized, and storage of historical and live data that can be easily accessed and shared to provide accurate information across different projects. What this will help us do is increase collaboration and transparency with our suppliers, with all the stakeholders of the project, improve our productivity, enable machine learning to empower decision-making, data-led cost and carbon reduction, and also enhance our digital rehearsals and debriefs. So this brings me to the focus areas that we'll have around 5D plus BIM in order to achieve those goals. So by having a structured information contained within a 3D model as a database, it enables, we're focusing on data analytics and machine learning. So it enables us to put Python and different types of scripts and embed them within the 3D model to provide some logic into it and start doing calculations for us, non-graphical calculations for us. And then this feeds into our live dashboards in different BI tools that can explain and visualize information for the stakeholders to support stakeholders' decision-making. Next focus area, which comes from also the previous one, is the design optioneering. So to give you an example, we're able to embed algorithms within the 3D model around to overcome challenges around, for example, circular economy. So in this example here, you can see how we are able, based on to prioritize which steelwork elements to switch from a stock list of steelwork in order based on their carbon rates and their carbon output. And we can also visualize extra information and that will support the project teams understand where this switch of elements is happening and add all sorts of different metadata that will support the decision making for this. Next, we have project controls. So as you can see, we're able to visualize carbon by location, so either by areas or by levels. We can also visualize carbon by program, so we can identify at what locations or what stage of the project we have the biggest carbon output, so we can make sure that the activities, when the activities are going to take place during that time, nothing is going to go wrong, because by doing some digital rehearsals for them, because the consequences would be very bad in terms of carbon. And the same principle, of course, applies for cost as well. And finally, we create Skanska's geospatial single source of truth. So we are able to visualize in one map all of our supply chain and our supply chain suppliers, as well as for all of our projects in one common place, which is easily accessed and shared within Skanska. And we're able to monitor and oversee the different stages of our projects, and we're also able to do some type of hotspot analysis, etc. So what's the process of our 5D plus BIM within Skanska? I'm going to show you a diagram. So we have the different project teams, which is usually the client, the design team, the planning team, the commercial team, and the environmental team. What we intend to do is everyone to keep working the way they are working. We don't try to add any extra work for them. So the client, the design team, usually they provided their 3D models in a Revit format. Our planning team works with 4D on Synchro, and our commercial environmental team utilize different digital tools like Airtable to contain cost and carbon rates, estimated cost and carbon rates. So what we do is through Python, APIs, Dynamo, and Airtable, we integrate all of this information that exists in these separate places, and we're bringing them together in one single source of truth. We integrate all of them together. And this single source of truth, imagine it like a table. It's kind of software agnostic. It doesn't matter where it sits. It's just some examples. It can sit in digital tools database like Airtable, or it can sit within the 3D model, which can be a Revit model or whichever other format. And then this database feeds our different digital tools that we're utilizing in Skanska across the different project teams to visualize information and enhance and support decision making. And this is how the process goes. The information is integrated together, the single source of truth is updated, and all of the information is automatically being delivered across the project parties. So what are the benefits and outcomes of that? So one of the benefits is that it helps us address customer demand, as our more and more of our customers have carbon targets that they need to achieve. And it's a very important, sustainability is a very important subject to them. Second is breaking down silos. So usually in a project, when the client, the design team, they're asking for something, the planning team is usually thinking in terms of time and program. The environmental team is thinking in terms of carbon. The commercial team is thinking in terms of cost. And their decisions, they don't know how their decisions affects the rest. And when they try to communicate with each other, with different Teams calls, emails, etc., it starts becoming very chaotic, and it's really hard for them to collaborate. So through this process, we're able to create this one single source of truth. So whichever change happens, either in the design, either we change a type of material that we want to use, either we change the program or we change a supplier, so the cost rates are changing. With one click of a button, the 3D model gets updated and everyone has access to this change and see how this change affected the project. And of course, this makes even more sense when you have all the other project teams like supply chain, engineering team, operations, and design management team, when they want to have access to this information, but it's very difficult because they have to communicate through through many disciplines in order to find some basic information. Another long-term benefit that this process is going to have for Skanska is that across the stages that we have, as the design progresses, the estimation accuracy of the carbon cost in time, it increases. As you can see from stage 3, as we reach stage 6 and actuals, the as-built model, that's when we know how much actual carbon and how much it actually costed or how much time it took to be built, the asset. And this starts building our database, which fits back into the next projects we're going to have. And this process repeats itself. And as you can see, our database keeps growing and growing across the projects, it's making us more and more accurate. So the concept of this is we are starting with an estimation accuracy across the stages, which could be shown like this. But as we progress through this process, the estimation accuracy of the earlier stages, it increases until it reaches that point where it's so high, where in the pre-construction stage, we will be able, based on the type of project, based on the design of the project, like design information of the project, like how many basement levels it has, how many levels it is, what's its location, different choices of supply chain, who the client is. We can access this database and we can start providing options to the customer so they know from the very, very early stages of the project approximately how much the project is going to cost in terms of carbon, cost, and program. And because the database is going to go so big, is going to grow so big, you don't even have to do some fancy stuff like AI and machine learning, for which specific projects you may need to in order to forecast these kind of things. But most of the times, I believe, based on our projects that we have, we will have a similar project that we could find into our database and extract the information from. So that was from me. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'm open for any questions you may have.
Brilliant. Thanks, William. Liam, are you ready once William's, if you can stop sharing your screen, William, and then we'll get Liam to share his.
No worries at all. And I'll share that now. Hopefully everyone can see that okay.
Just coming up. Bear with. Yep, it's there.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you, Justin, and thank you, William. That was really interesting. We're often talking, I suppose, to clients around the email side, so to understand how the BIM comes into it is really interesting. As Justin mentioned at the start, my name's Liam. I'm one of the senior client managers at Mail Manager, and I work with businesses globally, including architects, engineers, and construction firms to help them kind of unify their project information. Now, the technology landscape globally is kind of changing at an ever increasing speed, and there's no different within the architecture, engineering, construction industries, or we kind of call them the AEC. I'm sure that you've noticed kind of in your own work that technology is continuing to kind of rapidly evolve and drive the AEC to become safer, cheaper, and quicker. And today there are numerous examples of how technology is revolutionizing the AEC sector. For example, AI, virtual reality, and also kind of BIM. There's no surprise that with everything going on in the world right now, and teams either working kind of remotely or certainly a bit more of a hybrid work environment, it's becoming more and more difficult to access project information. AEC professionals like yourselves rely on strong, consistent communication, and this might take the form of pitches, winning clients, and day-to-day communication with your colleagues. The days are gone, or certainly kind of limited, where you can just turn around to the desk next to you and ask your colleagues to help you find an email, for example. And what this means for a lot of people is that they don't have access to the information they need, and when they're left out of the communication loop. As you can imagine, this is a pretty huge problem. With over 347 billion emails expected to be sent and received every day in 2023. Email is the most used communication and collaboration tool across the world, but it's one of the things that most people kind of manage differently, creating huge risks for the future. One of these risks comes in the form of project rework, and a recent study actually found that 80% of project professionals spend half of their time on rework, and poor communication costs $62 million every year on average. And reworks don't just waste your time and money, but they do cause huge communication breakdowns within your team and with your senior executive teams and stakeholders. So what Ideagen Mail Manager did is they ran an annual survey, which we call the State of the AEC Project Management Research Report, and that aims to discover the project management and collaboration challenges facing businesses globally in the AEC industries. The report explores how firms manage project information, where they store it, and how they go about retrieving data when facing legal disputes. And plus, it provides insights into how the industry has been affected by the current global economy, including kind of cost of living crisis, supply chain issues, and the latest building regulations. As you can see on the screen, this year we surveyed over 550 AEC leaders from businesses around the world, with majority of respondents coming from the United States and Canada. Our respondents worked in varied roles in their organizations, such as kind of CEOs, CFOs, presidents, and more. And before I move on to the next slide, I think we poll. Justin, are we launching a poll for this?
No.
Just check. Brilliant. So let's jump into the actual findings of the 2023 report. And first, the majority of firms cannot easily access their project information. So we found that only 10% of respondents were not concerned about the accessibility and visibility of their project information. So most see it as a big challenge. In fact, only 2% of respondents said they never need to retrieve emails from past projects. Secondly, we've got over a quarter of organizations are at risk when staff leave the business. We found that more firms are aware of the importance of filing emails as part of the offboarding process when people leave the business than they were last year. In 2022, I think less than half respondents, around kind of 44%, indicated that employees were required to file all project-related emails into a central location. And this year, that number's actually risen to 58%, which is really good to see. But unfortunately, 28% still do not require emails to be filed, and therefore this information is essentially lost. Third is that disputes are continuing to rise year on year. In our 2021 report, 63% of respondents experienced some form of dispute in the business, and this year that number has risen to a disturbing 91%. Project scope changes and payments continue to be the kind of leading cause of these disputes. And considering the majority of project scope information resides in email and formal documents, and firms can't easily access this, it's hardly surprising that they're continuing to dig themselves into a bit of trouble. And finally, email is still the most used communication and collaboration tool in the industry. More than 4/5 of respondents reported that most of their project correspondence is via email, and only 19% of respondents use email for less than half of their project correspondence. When asked about kind of their business's reliance on email, around 11% people surveyed say that email is now business critical in their organization, with most people agreeing that reliance on email has increased in the last kind of 12 months. And for the purpose of the session today, we'll only be focusing on the disputes angle of our research, but we will email people a copy of the full research report if it's wanted. Brilliant. So according to the World Bank, we are currently in the second year of a sharply slowing economic growth, and only overshadowed by the global recessions in 2009 and 2020. In the AEC, we're seeing trends that costs are on the rise, margins are tighter than ever, and there are large staff cutbacks. Even larger global firms have reported huge drop-offs in profit as their staff costs are increasing. And unfortunately, more firms are going into administration than ever, with so much uncertainty and so many people leaving businesses, that there is a strong need for organizations to think about their information management. And how can you be sure that you have access to all documents and correspondence if staff are to leave the business? Considering 28% of businesses do not have email filing as part of their offboarding process, and 81% of firms use email as the majority of their project correspondence, thousands of firms are kind of at great risk of losing information. And even more concerning is the finding that 55% of those surveyed indicated they do not have any email management systems in place. And I'm sure everyone on the webinar today has kind of heard or read, email is dead, but at least in our industry, these claims are definitely inaccurate. And in 2023, 88% of surveyed respondents indicated that their overall volume of emails has actually increased in the last 12 months. And this is a stark increase from the year before. And the contents of these emails are more important than ever, with 11% claiming it's now business critical. On top of this, almost 2/3 of AEC businesses regularly need to retrieve emails from past projects, with only 2% never having the need. And over the last 3 years of this research report, these numbers have remained pretty consistent. Many can kind of relate to not always needing to refer to previous emails. However, only 1 or 2% never actually need to. And for many firms, emails and keeping them well organized and accessible is not really a consideration until things go wrong. And as we can see, they hold kind of vital information that could mean that the difference between winning or, say, losing a dispute. So unfortunately, we're seeing that project costs are continuing to spiral, which has led to an increase in disputes within the AEC. Our research found that only 9% of people surveyed have not experienced a dispute in the last 12 months. And this is significantly higher than the previous 2 years of this research report, even kind of beating pre-pandemic records. And 63% of organizations reported experiencing a dispute in the business in 2021, and that's now risen to 78% in 2022 and then 91% in 2023. And the top 2 causes were issues related to project scope changes and chasing payments. And this follows a similar trend to what we've seen in the previous 2 years of this research report. And unfortunately for the industry, issues relating to project scope are continuing to kind of gain momentum. And I mean, why might that be? I mean, I guess because the majority, around 85% of information relating to scope changes, are stored in email and formal documents. And to break this down, 12% of project scope changes do not reside in a digital space at all. And shockingly, kind of 11% of respondents highlighted the only place that they're kind of kept is in the project manager's head. And in 2020, pre-COVID, this was 6.2%, which shows an alarming increase of AEC firms not formally recording project scope changes in the past 3 years. And with findings like these, it's kind of hardly surprising that 90% of businesses are concerned about their project information not being readily available or accessible. And in fact, kind of 1/3 of respondents indicated that they are very concerned by this. And understandably, organizations with an email management tool in place, such as kind of Mail Manager, reported even less overall concern with their information being visible by their teams compared to those that did not have a tool in place. So we're constantly seeing that failing to make emails visible and accessible to project teams can cause issues that result in a legal dispute. And according to Arcadis's 2022 Global Construction Disputes Report, the global average value of disputes was $52.6 million, with an average length of 15.4 months. And firms can't really afford to let information like email correspondence slip through the cracks. We've seen this kind of leaky bucket of email negatively affecting AEC firms globally recently, and firms must be aware of their kind of corporate history and be able to prove everything that has happened on projects, especially as the stakes are so high. And a recent disaster that has shaken the UK's AEC industry was the huge fire at Grenfell in London, and sadly 72 people lost their lives. And this was kind of one of the worst, I'd say, modern UK disasters. And I know a lot of you on the call today are based in the UK or Europe, but still, as a quick summary, the fire was caused by an electrical fault and spread quickly due to highly flammable cladding used in the building. In the inquiry, damning emails were uncovered that indicated that the kind of certain parties were aware that the cladding materials used were unsafe. And given the nature of the industry that you all operate in, firms kind of need to guarantee information visibility and accessibility to ensure they're making the right decisions. In the best case, kind of poor information management costs firms money, but in the worst, it can actually make people unsafe. And given the size of the global disputes environment, that the cost of kind of mismanaging emails is immense, and includes things like information being locked in individuals' inboxes, staff wasting time looking for information they need to do their job, maybe, as we said before, kind of staff leaving or even just kind of going on holiday, but then important information is still going to be kind of trapped in their inbox. And with proper email management processes in place, businesses can ensure that all project information and correspondence is captured and accessible by entire project teams, and this will reduce the risk of rework and stop project disputes in their tracks. Plus, you have this information to hand years down the line should a liability dispute arise. So that's kind of a quick overview, I guess, of our State of AEC report. And as I said, we can send out a full report in the next few days if you're interested to read it in more detail. But what does this actually kind of mean for information management, and how can it help avoid disputes going forward? I mean, luckily for us, technology advancements are kind of continuing to improve how we work. And as I touched on earlier, architecture firms are increasingly using tech to boost efficiencies. VR and 3D printing means you can kind of identify any errors before construction, for example. And BIM advancements mean that the team members can all be on the same page. The use of BIM has kind of several benefits, including reducing waste and improved collaboration, enhanced productivity. Then you've also got the time savings and overall kind of increased technology adoption. And it's improving safety across the industry and provides deep insights into existing buildings as well. In fact, following the Champion Towers collapse in Florida, the National Institute of Standards and Technology have utilized BIM and digital modeling to investigate why the building collapsed. And an international standard, ISO 19650, has been developed to set a standard of how building and civil engineering works should be organized and digitized, including when BIM is being used. So while all this kind of new tech is making our lives easier and really boosting the industry, it's hardly surprising that it's harder than ever to access project information and ensure that teams follow information management processes. And we have access to kind of a massive amount of information, both inside and outside of our organizations. This sensitive and often confidential information is typically stored in documents and correspondence, and can often be quite inaccessible, stored in kind of disparate applications by various departments or even various offices. Information is kind of the lifeblood of all project work, but only if it's actually well organized, accessible, secure, and updated. And this isn't exactly an easy task, but I guess there is definitely a solution. You kind of need a single place of all your project and client information is stored, so you can see the complete picture. And given any project you're working on, similar to what William was saying earlier, you need a single source of truth, and that's also known as the golden thread. And it's a concept kind of based around bringing all information together, ensuring everyone in an organization has access to everything they need before making any business decisions. The term came about after the Grenfell tragedy, and it's kind of a digital record of securely created, updated, and accessible information covering the entirety of a building's life cycle, including design, construction, and management. Single source of truth kind of provides better working methods and encourages more transparent communication. And this is helping organizations change faster without compromising quality. And it ensures that kind of all project and client teams have access to the correct information they need when they need it. Managing project information in one place is critical to avoiding disputes, and when it's done right, it allows teams to use their time, resources, and knowledge to make the right decisions at the right time. And you might be thinking, this sounds overwhelming, but luckily the technology is on our side. That the two easiest ways to kind of create a single source of truth are by removing manual processes of information sharing and increasing information visibility across the board. So one thing to keep in mind is that if your kind of single source of truth is not fully complete, it's not exactly the truth. And what we've seen in our research report is that while firms are stringent about how their documents and contracts are managed, email is the one thing that everyone manages differently. And without the right tools and automation in place, project teams are left to their own devices. Some people will move more emails into other Outlook folders. Some might save important information to their actually individual desktops, and others simply delete information if they don't see a need for it any longer. And in all of these scenarios, that information is trapped in silos and inaccessible to the wider project team. And as I said, information is kind of the lifeblood of all project work, but only if it's well organized, accessible, and secure and updated. And losing access to essential emails or not including them in your overall information management strategy can prove detrimental to firms. And when emails are managed correctly, everyone in an organization has access to the information they need to make the right decision at the right time. And it provides a much better way of working and encourages more transparent communications. And plus, it also removes the kind of responsibility of storing and managing data from one person or even like a particular department. So, I mean, I guess these are the kind of common email headaches that I hear regularly. And it could just be things like, this isn't what we agreed. When did you tell us this? So-and-so has left the company, so I'm coming in a bit cold to this. I need X, Y, and Z for a meeting, or forward that email. I think things that, yeah, I certainly hear every day. And AEC firms can really kind of benefit and I guess take away some of those headaches by having a single source of truth. And the key kind of benefits are on the screen there. So your data becoming more discoverable, eliminating that human error through automated workflows, establishing version control, reducing the amount of time wasted on searching for and recreating lost documents, increasing transparency and traceability, and complying with the regulatory and legal requirements such as ISO. And that's where I guess we kind of at Mail Manager come in. And who are we, where do we come from? I'm sure most of the people on the call have heard or even perhaps worked with Arup at one point. But for those who haven't, it's a global consultancy firm who have worked on kind of variety of different projects. I guess the Sydney Opera House being a pretty well-known one on there. And Arup built Mail Manager kind of over 10 years ago internally now. And the main reason was they didn't have control over how their staff managed their emails. Yes, they had some processes in place. I mean, they were trying things like, I think it was public folders and project email addresses at the time. But the problem was all these processes relied on individuals to remember to do it. And of course, kind of decide on what is and what isn't important, which I'm sure we can all imagine just didn't really happen. And the kind of two main issues were, one, that project teams didn't have access to up-to-date information on their projects as a whole, especially if they were, say, new on a project or maybe someone left. Then you've also got that risk element to it. And for us, or for Arup, they had to retain up to 14 years after a project had finished in case of any claims or litigation. And yeah, I mean, there's a chance you could go back and find that data, but it would be extremely time consuming to do so. So what Arup really wanted to do was kind of go out and find a system that would allow project teams to be able to find any email across the project within a few clicks. But we had to take away the time that was spent filing and most importantly, the reliance. If you ask people to like drag and drop or tag an email or something, it just wasn't going to work. They needed something that kind of just turn on overnight, would start learning people's behaviors, and would mean that email was a discussion that was never had to have again. They went out to market but couldn't find anything off the shelf. It was always part of kind of like a project management tool, and email was a bit of an afterthought. So that's why they decided to write their own system. And in terms of the firms that we work with now, that's I guess where we're at today. It wasn't really supposed to be a sold product. It happened quite naturally. People would see it in site meetings and kind of asked to trial it, and now it's kind of grown into the business that it is today. And these are just a few of the companies that we work with, just an example in the construction industry, and then yeah, a few in the engineering, and finally these are some of the companies we've helped. So we regularly kind of speak to our customers about how email processes have benefited their business, and we tend to hear a few things pop up regularly. For Gensler, which is an architecture firm, that the kind of key benefits of using Mail Manager's email management were saving 5 hours a week per person in administrative printing, file coding, and kind of hard copy filing. And then we've also enabled them to comply with many quality assurance and statutory standards as well. Second is Ramble, engineering firm, that they noted that Mail Manager means that important project information is now accessible by the wider team. Even when people are on holiday or leave the business, they're confident in the way that they will have access to all their information years down the line. And it's now kind of less time intensive to file emails, so staff can focus on value adding work that they enjoy. And with Mail Manager, that Ramble have saved approximately kind of 3 hours per week per person, especially for project members and managers, and improved efficiency and productivity across the projects. And then finally, we've also got WSP there. And better email management processes meant that they have been able to kind of retrieve project information in seconds. They find greater business efficiency, and they can spend more time on kind of real fee earning work and have greater visibility by capturing both sides of the conversation. So I guess all the kind of customer stories you heard there tie back to the four kind of key issues we hear from businesses that we talk to, and they're kind of ultimately the reason that they want to purchase something like Mail Manager. And I guess the first being that they're concerned about the consequences they may face if they were to lose any project information or perhaps correspondence. Then you've got their teams kind of spending hours a week searching for information contained in emails, or they're wasting time on admin, like manually filing to project folders. The third would be that they're concerned that they have kind of a lack of control over the communication that's coming into and leaving the business. And then finally, information being actually trapped in individuals' inboxes, making it pretty much unusable. But how does Mail Manager kind of actually help our clients. And with Mail Manager, we give our customers confidence that an email has been filed, can be retrieved. Businesses can find an email in seconds. The productivity will increase as you can find and file any email in seconds. And finally, you'll have one central space for all of your project information, helping you create and maintain that single source of truth that we spoke about earlier. Brilliant. So I'll just launch my other screen. So you're able to see a very short kind of demonstration. I'll just do an example of filing and searching so you can see what that would look like. And then if anyone did want kind of, I guess, a further demonstration, then we'll be able to reach out to afterwards. But as I mentioned, I guess Mail Manager isn't kind of one of those very large, bulky project management tools. It is going to live in the ribbon of your Outlook up here. Everything's accessed via these 3 buttons and 3 drop downs. So not something that's kind of a separate workflow almost. And what it will do is it will file to wherever your location is now. We don't kind of store your data. It could be in SharePoint, it could be on a server, it could even be in something like Procore, and that's where we'll point it to. And the way it works is it prompts you to file as you're going through your emails, whether it be opening and closing, sending a new one, or like here, I've got to send confirmation I've received. When I go to send that button here, that's when Mail Manager jumps in and says, well, hang on a minute, what are we doing with that email? Where does it need to go? Now, what it doesn't do is expect you to do the heavy lifting here. You don't need to scroll through a long list of every project you've ever worked on. What it will do is it will use machine learning to predict where that email should go and then bring it to you here. So it can see here, it's in the subject, Fitzroy, quite easy for it. It's suggesting it should go to Fitzroy Street. That's correct. So all I actually need to do is click send and file, and it will send my response and the original email from Ben into that project folder, in this case in SharePoint, where now other members of the team also have access to it as well. And that's probably the majority day-to-day how you're going to be filing. You've also then got the search side of things, and the search tool is accessed from just up here, and that would bring up this window. And this means that you're no longer searching your own inbox, but you'd actually be searching anything that's been filed that you've got permission to view. So you can do your kind of blanket keyword searches up here. That will look in the subject and the body. We may want to look into a particular project, which we can do this way. And then also we can use filters on the left-hand side to really kind of whittle down information. So if, say, similar to what we were talking about earlier, perhaps like a project rework, if someone comes back and says, hey, we worked on this project 4 years ago, the client's come back and is disputing something to do with an invoice, appreciate that your colleagues left now, would you be able to find that information? With Mail Manager, you can kind of start by asking the question, okay, what was the project? That was the one with Gensler. Fine. So I can go into that folder, but it was 4 years ago. So there's probably going to be a lot of emails in here, 2,500. But I can then think, okay, who was the colleague that they said left? Her name was Georgina. If I click on this including button, I can type in Georgina's name, and that then show me just the conversations that she was involved in the project. So we're down to 34, but an invoice is what they're asking for. So we'll just make sure it's got that subject or body. Even take it down further. I know it's going to be an attachment, so I'll just click on the attachment there, and it will just show me emails that have those. Brings it down to a little bit more of a palatable too. Now, you don't have to physically open every email. You do have the ability to kind of preview them, make sure that's what you're looking for. I can see that is what I want. That's great. And then you've got the ability to open it up as if it was in your Outlook the entire time. I've got the attachments. It's not actually an email I was involved in. I wasn't even working here at the time, but I can very quickly go back and find that information. Fantastic. As I said, that's very brief, just showing you a couple of examples of how that would work. But if you did want to a slightly more tailored demonstration to how your business works and your processes, then please feel free to reach out to the sales team or myself at liam.jones@ideagen.com. We'll be happy to organise it.
Liam, thank you. Thank you very much. So, William, if you want to turn on your camera and mic, we've got quite a few questions to get through. I know, William, you've been answering some of yours as you've gone through, but for the sake of everyone watching and listening, we'll backtrack through them. We'll do a couple for you, then a couple for Liam. So let's start with that first question that came in. Is Skanska using this 5D plus approach on many projects?
Yes, so also make sure that I answer the same way I wrote it. So, yeah, as the process has been developed in, well, approximately past year, at the moment we utilize it for specific packages in a few projects and going to fully use it in the new year for another couple of projects that are coming up.
Okay. Is there a set ambition of then for 2025 or how it might roll out further?
The concept is to become business as usual and being rolled out in every project that we have as a company.
Okay. Do QSs understand 5D BIM? Someone asks.
Yeah. So the concept with this, and this is why because in the past, many times we have used different types of software trying to implement 5D BIM and tools. So with this process, we try to have limited human interaction. So we're focusing on supporting people to make, to just keep doing what they're doing, but in a structured, organized way, which usually means being away from Excel, not touch it at all. And then we utilize programming and coding in order to obtain all of this data and bring them all, map them together. So it's not really, we don't have a requirement from the QSs to understand or interact with 3D models or understand what exactly 5D BIM is, but we provide them with all the information they need in order to make decisions.
Are clients actually asking for carbon reduction, or do you have to explain it to them?
So yes, the short answer is yes. It's quite the demand across every project we actually tender for. It's a key requirement from them, and their awareness around it is with all the clients we have interacted with is quite high, I have to say.
Yeah.
That's what my experience.
What percentage, someone asked, what percentage of estimation accuracy are we talking about?
So the estimations that are, well, this is two concepts. The first one is the estimation we are currently doing with 5D BIM with stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. So all of these estimations are coming from databases like IC or environmental product declaration certificates or our bill of quantities. So in order to have the estimations, we need to complete it on a project and have the as-built information in order to compare and identify that accuracy. And the second stage is the estimations that I mentioned about from the pre-construction stage, which is a long-term goal. And for this, I would say the more projects you have and you implement this process and you grow your database, the more accurate you're going to be.
Yeah. Again, is there a target percentage ratio you want to achieve or you expect to achieve?
Well, it would certainly be, I would say, 90%, 80 to 90% on pre-construction stage would be quite an achievement compared to what it is at the time.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do a final one for you for the moment. How are you engaging your supply chain in this 5D process?
Mm-hmm. So what I have to say is from the major packages, when I have interacted with people from our supply chain, I have realized because they only have to deal with one package, they are quite good and they know what 5D is and they are already implementing it. But there are also some smaller businesses which don't have the tools or the awareness to implement these kind of things. So I would say it's a change management principle, and the first thing you need to do is raising the awareness and helping them through different types of workshops to understand what it is and how they can implement it as well without having to consume too many resources.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, Liam, a couple of questions for you about Mail Manager. So does Mail Manager read documents attached to an email?
No, it doesn't. So you do have the ability to file attachments. Not most people choose to just file the attachment with the email, but it can't actually physically, it can't read them or go into them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What happens with sensitive emails, and are they protected, or the permissions or whatever?
Yeah, so what Mail Manager does, it mimics the permissions that you've got set up. So if you have certain areas where only certain people have access, you create a Mail Manager folder in there, only those people will still have read and write access to that. It doesn't change anything or require any extra permissions.
Okay. What happens with duplicate emails? I imagine that's more to do with there's 4 or 5 people on an email chain and everyone's responding to the same original email, and we all know what a email trail looks like.
Yeah, so every email that comes in is given a unique timestamp, which is right down to the second. So it will recognize if there's any duplicates and remove them.
Okay. And as we know from within every organization, everyone's skill levels are different. So someone says, obviously, some people are more organized than others. What's the induction/training involved if we introduce Mail Manager to our organization?
So we often do kind of multiple training sessions, depending on the size of the organization as well, and just to show people how the product works and using it the way that kind of your company wants them to. Luckily, because it's kind of in your inbox and it's prompting you to file anyway, it's quite quick. The adoption process is very easy because as you're replying to emails, you're getting prompted. It's recognizing where it needs to go, and you're just clicking an extra button. So it's even we often find the people that perhaps are the most concerned end up liking the tool the most because now they actually are being organized. They can find information easily. So yeah, it's a very quick adoption process.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Jump back to William. Some more questions about 5D. So there's one from Abu Bakir. I think effectively asking about the sort of the system's USP. William, so that was was that next one down you answered.
Yep. So yeah, like I said, it requires the reason is it requires minimal human interaction. It's mostly trying to bring information together through coding, so people don't have extra things to do. And yeah, that's why I think it's the best choice for everyone. It doesn't give usually when you're utilizing a 5D BIM software, it doesn't really change the way they work because it just adds activities to them. It doesn't replace them. So people are like, I have more things to do, right? And through this process, they don't have more things to do, and it makes them obtain information easier and to make decision making, essentially.
Yeah. 2 possibly slightly related questions in a way. Someone asks about whether your approach is covering embodied and operational carbon, but then there's a later question from Dr. David O. Stephen. Does Skanska factor in carbon input due to transportation, sourcing, and producing the material?
So no, at the moment, what we do is upfront embodied carbon. So it's A1 to A5. A1, which is the raw material, A2, the transportation of the raw material to the factory, A3, manufacturing the material, A4, transportation to the site, and A5, installation of the element on site. So it's A1 to A5 in total.
Okay. And then another one asks, how do you manage the challenges that come or impact the 5D processes?
Yeah, so this is by establishing the correct information requirements that we need in order to implement the 5D BIM, 5D plus BIM strategy we have, and these are embedded in the overall information management strategy that we have as our organization, Skanska.
Yeah, and I know there's been a couple of questions about Skanska's information management strategy. And I know that's not necessarily your specific responsibility. So I know you've answered those directly to those people. And I'm sure if anyone wants to link in with you, they can, and you can point them in the right place.
Yes, of course.
Etc. If people want to know more about that. Okay, what else have we got here? Let's scroll down. I think, I'm not sure if this question from Yelena is for William or Liam, but I suppose it works for both in a way. Probably more Liam. Is it possible to have a trial version? She asks.
Yes, yeah, we do offer 2-week free trials. I think it's I'd say most people will do that before purchasing the product, just to really see how it works in your environment, and how people react to the software. I think Elena also asked about an online version as well, and we do have a plugin for Outlook Online. We're currently kind of developing that further, so there'll be, in our next release next month, there'll be the ability to file and search via Outlook Online.
Yeah. And William, I know that your 5D approach won the delivering net zero with digital award at the Digital Construction Awards this past summer. And I remember your winning entry mentioned that at least one client had asked whether you could share the algorithm. And what intentions are there around potentially sharing your algorithm with your clients or with academia or with the wider industry?
So the part of the algorithm that we wanted to share was around circular economy and optimizing the switching of the steelwork elements, comparing stock list elements with the project steelwork elements, and essentially making this process much faster. Generally, yes, we're happy to share any knowledge we may obtain across this across our journey, and help as much as possible the AC and around it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not a ready tool that we can actually share. It's more like because it's a process. It's parts of it, and depending on the systems each organization have, they may need to adapt them to specific or fine tune it essentially.
Yeah. Understood. Okay. All righty. I think we've covered most of the relevant and direct questions. I'm conscious of time, so I'll move towards wrapping up. So if you bear with me while I reshare my screen. So as a reminder to all those watching, this webinar has been recorded, so you can watch it again or share the video with peers and colleagues via the original registration link from probably close of play today. For more on Skanska, go to skanska.co.uk. For more on Ideagen Mail Manager, go to mailmanager.com. I'm getting a bit of echo. Someone's everyone could just mute themselves. We get something out. Thank you. Yeah, for more Ideagen Mail Manager, go to mailmanager.com. This is our last webinar of 2023. Our first webinar of 2024 with Ideagen Mail Manager takes place on the 18th of January. It's entitled From Construction to Operations, Glider's Information Management Challenge on 40 Leadenhall Street. You can register at, there's a bit.ly link address there, bit.ly/glidermm18jan. I'll say that short URL again, bit.ly/glidermm18jan. It simply remains for me to say thank you to Ideagen Mail Manager for supporting this webinar, and thank you to William and to Liam for their time and insight this morning. And thank you, the audience, for tuning in. See you next year.